English is a Germanic language. That means it should be similar to languages like Dutch, German, Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish. English does in fact have similarities to those languages, but not as much as it once did. If you have had any exposure to the French language, you might be able to guess why. English and French are surprisingly close, despite English being a Germanic language and French being a Romance language like Spanish and Italian. Why does English have all these French elements that the other Germanic languages lack? Well, William the Conqueror is why. Okay, let's zoom out now and understand how William the Conqueror managed to do this. If you look at English history ranging from the Roman times to medieval times, you will see this island was being constantly invaded. You had the original Celtic peoples who worshipped Elu. Then the Jupiter worshipping Romans showed up and conquered everything until they decided to build a wall called Hadrian's Wall. Fun fact, George R. R. Martin, the author behind Game of Thrones, based the wall in his book on this Roman wall. One major effect of the Roman Empire on what would become known as England was that the Romanized Celts would convert to Christianity due to the empire linking them to the wider world. Once the Roman Empire began collapsing, the Germanic Jutes, Angles, and Saxons who worshipped Wotan and Sunor, more commonly known by their Norse names of Odin and Sor, invaded and conquered England, pushing the Romanized and Christianized Celtic people into what became known as Wales. Despite their victory over the Christians, this group, often referred to collectively as the Anglo-Saxons, eventually converted to Christianity. As might be guessed, these Anglo-Saxons are seen as the main ancestors of the modern English people. Despite being the creators of the idea of England, the Anglo-Saxons were not the last group to arrive in England. Other Germanic peoples called the Norse, who continued to worship Odin and Sor, sailed from Scandinavia into England and began to conquer it. The fight for land between the Anglo-Saxons and these Vikings persisted even after the Vikings converted to Christianity. Great kings would flip the balance of power, with Alfred swinging it in favor of the Anglo-Saxons and Canute bringing it on the side of the Norse. But while this struggle between Anglo-Saxons and the Norse went on, something greatly significant occurred. The Viking Rolf, more commonly known by his Latin name of Rollo, had been attacking France when he was offered a deal by the French king. Stop attacking France, convert to Christianity, and in exchange, receive Normandy as a possession. Rollo took it. Importantly to the premise of this video, Rollo and his followers, who would become known as the Normans, started speaking French as they assimilated into French culture. His descendant, William the Conqueror, would use this possession of Normandy as a weapon to conquer England, which he held a claim on. When the famous Norwegian king, Harald Hardrada, remembered as the last great Viking, had fought a fierce battle against the Anglo-Saxon king Harold Godwinson, William set sail to England with a Norman force. Godwinson, who had defeated Hardrada, was weakened from his fight with the Norwegian king and fell to William. With Godwinson dead, William became the king of England and quickly built strong stone castles all around the country to keep Norman aristocrats safe and hold down the Anglo-Saxons frustrated by being ruled by a foreign conqueror who spoke French. Despite this tension between the largely Anglo-Saxon population and the Norman elite, the Normans would remain as the source of England's aristocratic class. Even the famous King of England, Richard the Lionheart, was rarely in England and actually spent most of his time in France. With such behavior, it is of no surprise that French was the language of aristocratic functions. As a result, French words would eventually enter the English language spoken by the general population. Thus, the reason why English sounds so French can be credited to a Viking and his descendant. I will conclude by reading a passage from Peter Simpson in his book, England in the Middle Ages, The Normans, 1066 to 1154. That highlights how the invasion of all these different groups, not only the French-speaking Normans, resulted in the English language being highly unique. Simpson writes, "The English language is as rich as it is because Norman French and Saxon English grew up alongside each other more than they integrated immediately after the conquest. The Normans in their castles and monasteries, and the Saxon English in their villages spoke their own languages. Dove comes from Saxon, pigeon from Norman, uphold from Saxon, and support from Norman, and so on. Many Norse words persist, such as egg, loft, gang, and gosling, while the names of their gods are remembered in our days of the week. So if you've ever wondered why Thursday sounds awfully similar to Swords Day, now you know that that is not a coincidence." Simpson adds that the Celtic Welsh language is also represented with bard and flannel, and Latin terms have been preserved in science and medicine. The submergence of the Saxons beneath the new Norman elite is shown clearly in the languages of eating. Saxon cow became Norman buff on the table, or as we would now say, beef on the table. Swine became pork, served on the Norman plat, or what we would now call a plate. What Simpson is essentially saying is that the Anglo-Saxons had to do the farming work with the animals, while the Normans were the ones who got to feast off the meat. Simpson concludes that with this blended vocabulary, English became one of the richest and most nuanced languages in the world. Okay, so English arose from the Anglo-Saxons who conquered England, which was previously inhabited by Romanized Celts. However, aspects of Latin and Celtic Welsh ultimately entered the English language. Then, the Norse invaded and their words entered the English vocabulary. Finally, the Normans invaded and introduced a prominent French element. Thus, the language I am speaking in this video is the product of multiple invasions of one location. Whether you agree or disagree with the Greek philosopher Heraclitus' quote that war is the father of all, it does appear to be at least true in the case of the formation of the English language. If you want to read about this topic right away, there are plenty of books that are in the public domain and thus can be read for free on the website Project Gutenberg. For example, 3 out of 6 volumes of The History of the Norman Conquest of England, Its Causes and Its Results by Edward A. Freeman are available. If you want to read that text in particular, my pinned comment will guide you to it. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leaving a like and subscribing to the channel will help others discover it. Goodbye.